Hi, welcome to 20 Ideas for Using 2.5-inch Strips with GourmetQuilter. I'm Susan Clare, the Gourmet Quilter, because quilting is delicious. So we're having a lot of fun with some ideas to make all sorts of things, starting out with some 2.5-inch strips, which are fairly easy to come by these days, particularly in the quilting world. So I've gone ahead this time. I thought we'd have a little bit of fun this time. We've done already 12 ideas, so this is number 13. And as I said, there's 20 altogether. If you've already signed up on GourmetQuilter, you'll have a pattern to download and print so that you've got all the information that you need there for cutting and all sorts of other things. Other than that, I'm here just to show you how to go through the process. So today we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're just going to be playing some games. So we're going to make a little Noughts and Crosses board, although I believe it's often called Tic Tac Toe, but to me it's always been Noughts and Crosses. So we've just got these little counters that we can make, and we can just have a little bit of fun having a little game. And on the back we've just got a little pocket here so that we can store all the counters in it so that they don't get lost. Now how amazing is that? So I've just thought we'd go through the process, obviously relatively simple initially. So I've already started with my inside my 9 patch that's going to go in there. And then we're going to pop a frame around that. So I've already cut my strips ready. So they're going to go there and they are going to go there and there. And then because we have got this flappy bit over on the back, we're just going to put some extra bits on. After we've put the frame around that, we can then go ahead and just, I've already joined the strips up, and we can just join those on as well, so that we've got this long strip that we're going to work with. So I'm going to go ahead now and sew my bits together, and then I'll come back and show you how to do the next bit, because I don't think you need to see me sew all these straight seams. So I've gone ahead, I've put my frame around my 9 patch, and I've put the 2 extension pieces on, which end up becoming the back of our piece. So I'm just pressing that, just felt that seam go a funny way there. Pressing that seam that way. So that's pretty good. We're well on the way already. So now we want to just lay that onto our batting. And we want to trim the ends of the batting to the same length. Not necessarily the sides at the moment, but we want the length, the right length, because we're going to sew it together with the lining. So I'm just going to trim off the ends of the batting there. And then we need to have our lining. So I've already gone ahead, the lining I've just done with joined up strips because it seemed like a good idea. It sits completely inside, we don't see these at all. So I've joined them, pressed all the seams one way, and I've already trimmed it to length, and it should be just a little shorter, not a lot, than our main piece, and it is just a little shorter. So I'm pretty happy with that, and that's because when we're going to sew these seams, and when we turn it out the right way, I want that seam to just slightly roll towards the lining so that it doesn't show. See, these strips are inside here. I want that just rolled in so that we don't see the different colours on this edge here. And so if we make the lining just slightly shorter, and the cutting in the pattern tells you how long to cut it and everything. So now what we need to do is just sew these seams here, and then we're going to turn it out and press it and have that seam just rolling in slightly. So I'll go ahead and get these seams stitched and show you how I'm pressing it. So I've sewn the ends, so what I didn't specifically mention was that our lining is slightly shorter than our front piece, but we do need those edges absolutely together when we sew them so that we can have that rolling thing. So it's just pulling in just a little bit at the moment, so when we turn it out the right way, we're going to do some quilting on it, but I wanted those edges sorted first. So once we flatten this out, this should just roll in ever so slightly. It's not very much, maybe about 1/8 of an inch. Should just, so that we just don't see these colours on the outside. But you don't want to make make it too much. Well, you could make it more, but you'd have to add more fabric somewhere. So it's looking pretty good. Let me just get this, just that little skerrick round to the other side is just sitting nicely. So that's great. We're all ready. We can press it from this side as well, and then we're ready to do some quilting on it. So I'll go ahead. I'm just going to do pretty much some straight lines. I'll probably do these either side of these lines and here, and inside here I might just go around there and just inside that center square. It doesn't need a huge amount, but it does need something. So I'll go ahead and do some quilting, probably 1/4 inch either side of these lines, maybe only 1/8 of an inch inside and inside here. So I will show you when I've done that. So I've been busy quilting and I'm just on the last line of stitching now. So I'll show you very shortly what it is that I've done. So I've used a slightly larger stitch than I normally sew with. So what I've done is I've done 1/4 inch in from each end. Then I've gone 1/4 inch either side of the next 2 seams, but I've done nothing on this one yet because we're going to be top stitching when we fold it. And then I've just gone 1/4 inch around the outside of the 9 patch. I've done a 1/8 of an inch inside and then 1/8 of an inch inside the center square. So it's looking pretty good. You can see all the stitching on the back, and I'm just going to trim this now. That's as much as we need to do. So there's no quilting on these 2 lines here because we will be top stitching that, and that is all we need to do. So I'm just going to trim those little edges off so that we can do the next bit. So because the back has a sort of envelope-y type flap on it, I'm just going to fold it. So I'm folding it right along this seam line here. Folding it up so that the right sides are together and folding this one in. So what we want to make sure when we put this all in place, because we're going to sew the 2 seams, is that these are overlapping just as they should do, like fabric wise and things. Make sure that that's on the fold where that seam in there is and in here, and it's all looking pretty good. So I'm just going to pop a couple of clips in there so that I can just make sure that stays where I want it. Don't really want it moving. It does not have my permission. Yep, that's all looking good. And on this side, same thing. So it's worth getting these things sitting right at this stage, because it will just helps with the whole thing when it's all put together, when we turn it out the right way and things. So all I now have to do is stitch those 2 side seams, and then, well, perhaps I'll do that and then I'll just show you what I'm going to do with them. So I've gone and sewn my side seams, and now what we want to do, we're going to be turning it out the right way and then top stitching around to enclose this seam. So we just want to trim that down, not as much as 1/8 of an inch, but just a little bit less than 1/4. So just taking off a little whisker on the side there. It's quite thick through that overlap bit, so you might just have to come back and just do that. And I'll do that on both sides. So that's gone really well. So what we now want to do is turn that out the right way. So we're going to pop our little corners out. So this would actually work as a little cushion or something if you wanted it to, but we're going to leave it flat for the purpose I'm making it, so that we can just keep the game pieces in it. But it does work as a little pillow as well, this sort of cover. So now we just want this to be sitting nicely on the end here, so that we can top stitch with that seam there. This should sit in there, and that should overlap. So this should be overlapping, that whole centre strip should be overlapping that one there. So I'm just going to press that and just make sure my corners are out as far as they'll go. They're generally looking pretty good. So I just want this seam to press nicely along here and the sides, so that when we come and just top stitch, it all sits nicely, and it also encloses those raw edges of that last seam that we've just done. So all our edges will be covered nicely by doing it this way. And that's all looking pretty good in there. Woohoo, they are looking good. So now it's just ready for me to top stitch 1/4 of an inch all the way around. Just make sure you don't catch this bit as you go around. Sometimes it wants to pick little bits up when you're not watching. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to show you how to make the game counters. And then we can have a game. So I'm pretty happy. That's come up well. It's looking good. We've got a nice somewhere to store things. As I said, it does also work as a little pillow cover if you wanted it to be one, but I just thought it would be quite good because the counters and things will be quite secure tucked in there as somewhere to store them. It'd be a great little travel game, or just because. So we've got these little counters to make now. So I'm just thinking it's so much fun to be able to just play this game, and I just really want to play the game, but I better finish the job. So in the pattern, there's some shapes here for you to trace for your applique. We're appliquing the cross and the circle on, and then we're just going to do some stitching on here. So what we need to do is we're going to sew 2 squares together, but we're actually going to sew them in a circle. And here's the circle. But we also want to be able to turn it out the right way. So what I'm suggesting that we do is slash the X. So if you just do a little bit of a rough fold over diagonally and just slash a little bit. You don't want to go right out too far because it's got to be covered by the applique. So do that in both directions. Just cutting in probably 1/2 inch or so, about the amount that's on the pattern. And then we're going to put this piece right sides together. So this one's on a piece square of batting, right side up. This one is now going right sides together there. And we just want to sew that circle. So what I found was really an easy way. You could mark the circle, but I found that if I cut out the pattern for the circle and just a little tiny dab of glue, it doesn't need to be much. We're not really trying to stick it, we're just trying to hold it. Any sort of glue stick works fine. And I found it was easier to sew it from the batting side up. Pop that on there and then just follow around that edge with the sewing machine. So you're just following that circle rather than drawing and tracing and things like that. So I'm just going to stitch all the way around that circle. You might have to stop and lift your foot a few times. And sometimes my circles are very organic, even doing this. I like organic circles. So there's 10 counters to make, 5 in 2 different colours is how I'm suggesting, because when you play you may need up to 5. If you're going to be the winner, you might need 5. So as I would like to be the winner, I need 5 counters. Now you could use something else, you could use buttons or you could use some other counters. However, I thought it was fun to make the whole thing because we can. So then you don't need that on there, and you can just then stick it onto the next one to sew around. So we've got our circle here, definitely looking quite organic. We've got our little opening on the other side there. So now we just want to trim that. So you want to trim it so maybe just a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch left, because we're going to be turning it in the inside out or out, right side out or whatever it is. You don't want too much bulk in there, and it'll sit better if there's just not too much there. So we've got this little hole here now that we cut before. So now we just want to turn that out the right way. And then with your trusty little turning tool that we use, my pencil perhaps, just again, like I usually do when I turn things out, just run that around the seam and you'll get a reasonable result doing that. And then we just want to make sure that these pieces of material that we cut are all sitting together. So just make sure that they've all popped out again, and then I'm just going to press that. So press it so that as far as possible all the fabric sits together again, because then everything should be sitting fairly well. So like I said, my circles are possibly a little organic, however organic is good. So that we've got that little X there that we need to cover. So either with the circle, I've got an X here, I've done all the circle ones, it's just the same thing. So I've got fusible web on the back of my shape, so I traced it onto the fusible web, I ironed it to the back of the fabric, I've cut them out, and these ones I've ironed and I've stitched them on. So now we just need to peel the paper off the back, and just make sure you're covering over, and it should cover without any trouble, that cut that we've made there, and iron that in place, and then we've just got to stitch that on, and then we can have a game. So, and I'm just going to go around with just a straight stitch, nothing particularly fancy on this. Just takes a few little turns and we'll be done. So it's really not a problem to do this sort of thing. The circle is just the same. Because we've got a circle on there, we can just stitch on the circle. And because I've got the fusible web in there, it should be absolutely fine as far as wear and tear goes. You could do a different type of stitching if you didn't like the straight stitch just near the edge. You could do a blanket stitch or anything you like, really. But I find this works really well for me. And I'm just excited now to have a game. I guess it's going to be me and the cameraman. So we're nearly there. Just do a little back stitch there. And I can trim off any little threads that are hanging around. And here we have a little game board, and we've got 5 of each counter so that we can now, I can win by putting them there. Oh, I could win by putting those there. Whatever it is. So that was a little bit of fun. I thought it was just an opportunity to have a little play with some bits and pieces. These 2.5-inch strips are just wonderful fun, and that can just be stored in there out of the way, and nobody even needs to know they're there. And hopefully they don't get lost that way either. So thank you so much for watching. That was idea number 13 for 2.5-inch strips, and I will see you again with an idea number 14.